in every classroom, K through 8, when I was a principal, and that was normal. And that can't be normal anymore, because as I've said all along, a classroom of 20 today with the needs of those kids, I can't stress any more than I have for the time that I've been in this position. Our demographics have changed, the needs of our kids have changed, their academic needs, their behavioral needs have changed. It's a different dynamic in a classroom of 20 than it was with a classroom of 28, 15 years ago. There is no doubt in my mind. It looks different, it feels different, right? So if we go back to 28 kids in a classroom with special education, ESL needs, behavioral, safety plans, we are regressing. And we've worked really hard to use all of our revenues, right? And I think in your book, you'll see that, right? That was something that I know Ian and I spent a good amount of time with Sean Cronin my first year, right? Really looking at, you have to use all of you're getting entitlement grants. You can't piecemeal it. It all has to be part of the plan. What is your plan to educate kids, right? Use your Title I funds so that it's part of the plan. It's part of your reading plan. It's part of your teaching plan. It's all school. All teachers can be part of Title I. We've changed the way we've done those things. So we've done all those things. So it does feel, again, heartbreaking and regressive. You're right, because 22 years I've been in this district, we've never been in a position where the majority of our classrooms are around 20. Never. And so to go backwards, and I know also what my job is, but to go backwards to now say, like, hey, teachers, I know this is a struggle already, but now we're going to have class sizes of, maybe 24 to 28 again in some places, is just going to be, it's going to be really challenging and very, very, and then to continue with our progress, it just makes it more challenging.
And you have the strange dynamic of post-COVID because of the mental health situation.
Yep.
And you gave us case studies.
Yes.
And it's horrifying, the case studies. So from my perspective, automatically before I do anything else, I have to be in support of the crisis intervention. Because if you don't have crisis intervention in our schools, it's going to impact the vast majority of students who are entitled to an education. And what you alluded to is that the state and the federal government keeping the localities in a lurch regarding the migrant crisis. We're not receiving any resources, definitely not at the federal level, and it seems like it's fewer and fewer resources from the state level to handle the situation. Now, if we're scrambling, it should be because you rely upon a budget of consistency,
right,
reliability, and if you were in the private sector or in the public sector, you would consistency and reliability of a budget, that you knew you had grants, entitlements, automatic allocation of funds,
yep,
right? And that's a nebulous situation right now because we're scrambling to see if it can be resolved, and there's no set number on that. Right. Now they're talking, it was like over the past 2 years, or excuse me, this year and going forward is going to be about $2 billion taken out of the state budget to handle that situation. Now that could be a low number, and I don't think there's any resources from the federal government, any lifeboat to help us at the locality. So it's something that you look at post-COVID with the mental health situation, the migrant situation, and again, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, we have to deal with these children. And it's something that I'm not going to be a person start attacking because we have to provide services to these children. Mm-hmm. And if you have one case of someone who's traumatized from overseas coming here, right, and it costs us $500,000, right, that circuit breaker account should not be 75% reimbursement, it should be 100% reimbursement, because it's an unfunded mandate that's inflicted upon the local community. So, I mean, we're going to go back and forth on different scenarios, and we're going to be offering amendments and making cutbacks, and then the municipality is going to be dealing with contract negotiations, reduce unrestricted local aid, the situation at Holy Family Hospital. So they're in dire straits, but just to recap, I've never seen in a full economy how much of a recessionary budget we're dealing with right now, and it's a massive disconnect. Thank you.
Yep.
Member Keegan.
I hate to ask this so bluntly, but can you bottom line this for me? For $1 million, how many staff positions are we talking about losing in the district for next year?
I could try to bottom line that for you. It pains me to do it. We're probably talking, and do I have Colleen here? Is she behind me? She just walked in. Hi. So it does depend on the position. So Ms. McCarthy is behind me. I was just bluntly asked, $1 million would potentially be, how many staff are we talking? Because we know, we've already explained that for staff, I also need a ratio of layoffs to cover unemployment. 30?
Without knowing specific
Yeah.
positions, 25 to 30-ish would be my.
I was gonna say 30, so that was a good guess.
So we're looking at laying off 30,
Potentially.
potentially 30 staff members for next year. That's actually a potential.
Yes.
We're looking at that, and that's.
100%. Yeah, so like I said, from what I said to you, right, this $1.7 gap that we still, $1.7 million gap that we still have, about 600,000 or 700,000 of that calculated is with current open positions, right? So positions that are in the budget that either have not been filled, or some folks have resigned or chosen to stay on leave and not come back, right?
Well, that's why I asked for the $1 million, not the 1.7.
Correct. So we are going to get down to that piece with the principals this week. And then, again, we're still a little bit off, right? So yes, we're talking about, in my head, I was going to say 30, which would be like a 1 to 2.
I would just caution, right? So you want to be careful of this juncture. So this is not, while it is tough, difficult, this is not an abnormal part of the process. So I want to be very careful before we jump to the L word, right? We've got to have no options before we jump there. Yeah, go ahead.
And Mr. Chairman, too, like the superintendent alluded to, is through attrition. We're going to have, that would be the first mindset anyways. And I would expect, I can't speak for yourself, Mr. Mayor, or the city council, is that I'm hoping under the circumstances that the recent history of contributions will be above what it's been traditionally in the past. I know fiscal year '22 was above a certain amount, and there was another year that was above a certain
Yep.
amount.
This one is too.
Okay, so that, I mean, my perspective, because I've served on the city council and I've served on the school committee, is that I want it is to be as rational, honest, fair budget as possible, but also with the reality of the situation is that you have taxpayers that will have to foot the bill.
Absolutely.
So if we had, and I don't like to use the term wish list.
Yep.
It definitely was, the superintendent was a needs.
Yep.
It was a justification for every position that was presented to us.
Sure.
Like, for instance, the secretaries are inundated logistically with paperwork requirements because of state and federal regulations and programs and entitlements. Plus, they have to answer the phones and resolve situations. So, for instance, in that case, if we don't have maybe full-time additions, maybe have some maybe part-time secretaries who are just recently retired,
Yep.
that are collecting the pension, and they can work up to a certain amount of hours. That might alleviate some of the backlog, but then it adds to the budget.
Yep.
But, like, again, it's something that, it boggles the mind, like, why we are even presented with this. Because in the very least, you say, okay, if the previous year was $8 million increase, okay, now it's going to be an $8 million increase, but in future years, you've got to be prepared.
Yep.
There was no preparation for this. And again, you're dealing with the full economy. Last time I checked, it's still about, what, 3.2%?
Yeah.
In Massachusetts, the unemployment rate. So it's unheard of to have to make cutbacks at the local government, right? And like you have indicated through all your years of service and with the superintendent, because you had to right the ship,
Yep.
is that you have the CAFO, you had state oversight, you had your managerial background in the private sector. We built up our cash reserves.
Yep.
We reduced the interest rate on our debt. We
We did.
paid off debt.
Yep.
So we've done everything possible to show to the state, and we've also increased the test scores. We've dealt with the headwinds of the mental health, post-COVID, and also the migrant situation, okay? We've done everything possible, and plus we still have class sizes at 20 pupils per class, right? Which is, again, a success story.
She's been-
And now all that's going to be washed away because of what we have to deal with. And it's unfortunate. But, again, I would not entertain any layoffs, and I don't even think we're in that ballpark yet. I would just say that for the record.
I would agree. Yep, Member Shabilia, sorry.
The elephant in the room is we're making an educated guess. We still have 7 collective bargaining units that we need to get through. So this is all kind of conjecture at this point.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, with the best of intentions, we're hedging our bets here.
We are, except I have to have an approved budget by May
No,
22nd.
right.
And have to be able to go through this process to give the city a budget for the school department. So I'm working off of what I know, right? So we're hedging a bet a little bit, but at the same time, I know what my numbers say now, and I know what I have now, and I know what salaries I have now. So I don't want to sugarcoat this part. I don't know how to get $1 million out of this budget without having it be people. I don't know how to do that. I have done everything I can with our team to make sure that we are looking at supplies, district tuitions, everything that I can on a weekly basis to adjust this budget. I don't know how, next week, I'm not sure, unless the city number changes, I don't know how I'm gonna come to you and not say, this is where we're cutting to get to $104 million. I just don't know. I want to be really transparent and honest with all of you. I don't want to lay off a soul. I've been through it as a principal, an associate principal. I don't want to do it. It's not good for the community. It's not good for our kids. It's not good for our staff. We have been in such a good position, and I appreciate, Member Willett, what you just said. I think the mayor and I have done a lot of righting the ship, and this is why this feels not good, because we're in a position where we've taken the ship in the right direction, and we still have a ways to go, right? Nobody is saying that this district doesn't need more time and work and progress, but if we don't commit, which I know we have, to lower class sizes, the support staff adapting our practices to the fact that our students' needs are changing. That's what we're doing every single year with our strategy plan and everything else that we've been presenting. I don't know how else to get to this number without telling you that it's going to lead to layoffs. So I want to be, and nobody wants to say it, I have to say it, because I don't know how I'm going to get my team to that point next week. I don't have, right, 75, 80% of our budget is salaries. I don't know how to get to $1 million, right? I can't cut all maintenance, I can't cut, I still have to run the district. So there still has to be people and programs and materials and school supplies and, books in kids' hands. So I still have to do those things. I want to be really honest and transparent about how to do it.
I
And-
guess the only thing I want to say, so
Yeah.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate how difficult the position it is.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say this for the public, there will be no increase in the city number. There can't be. So we are breaking the taxpayers as it is, right? It's difficult, and we're losing people every single day who are losing their houses, right? So there has to be some consideration given to the taxpayer in all the budgeting. right? Not just the school budget, in every part of the budget. But having said that, so we did add people through grant positions. You know, I'd want you to tell me first, what have we done with all the grant hires? Where are the grant hires gone?
So
Right.
we did that,
I get it.
Executive summary,
but-
okay.
So, you know, the number I get from financially looking at the schools and the number I get from you guys is vastly different. So I'm hearing a number of 42 people were hired with the ESSER 3 grant, right? And I see Colleen shaking her head, yes, that is a far different number than what was presented to the school committee,
BBEs.
right? 42 people, right? 42 people is a significant number, and I'm not trying to make this point counterpoint, guys, right? I don't want to fight this out with you, but I see where this is going to go. You know, to me, I appreciate your point, but we're in that point every year, just about, every 3 years.
New to me.
Yeah, but every 3 years, we often are on the precipice of making a budget where we don't have signed CBAs.
Yeah.
That is not new business, right? I hate to put it that way, but it happens, right? And so we plan for it, right? And to your point, does there have to be growth attributed? Absolutely. Do people deserve a fair living wage? Absolutely, right? But, you know, we've got to make sure that we're all on the same page about everything. And so, you know, I take a look at the grant-funded heads that we cautioned, that I'll turn to him, because he was the other one here with me, I think. We cautioned and said, let's be careful about hiring people in the grants, because when the grant runs out, now here you are, right? And so all I want to do is say, we got to put everything on the table. And I'm going to go back to what I say. You're not going to hear me say the L word until we absolutely have to say it, right? Until we're forced to say it. Go, let Member DeZog go first, because you talk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've just been hearing everybody talk and hearing the L word. And, you know, for some of the members in the back of the room and the mayor and I, we sat here literally May of, wow, it seems like so long ago, 2020, it was something, where we were in the same situation where I'm hearing the same thing. And it was a much, I think, more devastating time because we didn't know what was going to happen. But again, that's what our jobs are for. That's why I'm sitting here listening to everybody talk and say, we understand $1 million is a lot of money. But again, as school committee members, and I've also now talked to city councilmen, that is our job to be calling up our state reps, calling up our senators like we did during the COVID era, and telling them, look what you're about to do to us. And I know everybody likes to be like, well, we got to be nice, and we got to be nice to the ledge. And you could shake heads and say, no, well, I'll make it public right now. Our senators and our representatives are not doing their job, because for us to be in this situation where we are taking care of, as Member Willett would say, we are taking care of other people's problems right now. And, you know, it's nice and dandy, but when it's costing our taxpayers, especially the elderly, that have retired, that have worked hard for their money, and now are losing their homes, that's unfair for them. So, I'm at the point where I'm just being a realist. And I care about our staff, I care about our kids, but at the end of the day, we are, like the mayor said, we cannot break the taxpayers' back every single time that the state decides to hold money from us. That's it. Like, I sit here and I see all the pressure, and it just reminds me of 2020 all over again. No.
I don't want to, so that was the point that we was talking about this. So we were considering layoffs in 2020. We long thought on them, and we did not. Right? We, thank God, came up with a workable plan. And then the next year, the SOA really kicked in, to your point, right? And was a welcome relief. But I absolutely agree with Member DeZog. We have to keep pushing on our state government, right? With $8.4 billion in the rainy day fund, right? This is not the time to say no, right? But, you know, having said that, if all that does, my purview is that we should look at the grant-funded positions that we've kept. You got to start there, and I don't want to start anywhere. I don't want to lay off one head. I've never laid off an employee in the city of Methuen. I've laid off plenty of employees at Raytheon. Let me tell you, it's no easy task to do, right? So I think we got a lot of work to do before we get to the L word. I'll just keep saying the L word because I don't even like saying it, right? So, Member Willett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You raised some very valid points, and I think the neighboring community of Haverhill is dealing with 50% of their COVID money was linked to personnel. And to me, that's a one-time revenue stream that you never do. And I attacked a prior mayor on that, is that that person was using one-time revenue streams to balance the budget. So we need to really get a verification of what you're saying, because if Haverhill was 50%, it creates a massive structural deficit of using one-time revenue streams, which you never should do. So if we were doing that in Methuen, I would have been against it 100%, because it's my history of having honest budgeting. But I want to let the report be furnished to us.
Yep.
And I think you raised a valid point, just like Member Shabilia, is that if we're looking, like, again, at supplies versus personnel, or transportation versus personnel, or grant positions versus mainstream personnel,
Yeah.
right? Like I said before, the biggest addition I want to see is the crisis intervention, because it's meritorious.
Yeah, I agree.
Other than that, if the libraries have to suffer, so to speak, or we have to work on an alternative plan that you alluded to and explore that,
Yeah.
that's something. But if it's like I said before, and I've said it in separate meetings, if we need to have a
Yeah.
bare bones budget,
Yeah.
and if that wakes up the interested parties because I've had maybe 2 people approach me about the budget, and I shared the letter that I drafted that we approved.
Okay.
We did a resolution to the state delegation. We did a budget letter to the state delegation. I sent emails and I made calls to them.
Yeah.
Right? I've had maybe 2 constituents approach me about the budget, and I don't know why the leadership is waiting until the last second
I agree.
and focus on other things. Focus on Beacon Hill.
Yeah.
And Member DiZargalio, the tenacity, I approach him and I say, yeah, be tenacious and be respectful,
Yeah.
but be tenacious in approaching the Beacon Hill, because the House budget with the Ways and Means did not help Methuen. The amendments, I know I spoke to Representative Hamilton after the audit joint meeting with the city council.
Yep.
He said there was an amendment that would help the gateway communities.
Yeah.
I know Chelsea is circulating a letter.
Yep.
But with Chelsea, right, the leadership of a union was attached to supporting that letter.
Yeah.
And I'm not hearing it from the leadership of our unions that their direct jobs are going to be impacted because of the state budget. So you still have under consideration the amendments with the House side. The Senate will take up amendments, and then anything that's reconciled in the conference committee, and then also the governor might have a line item veto that you have to override.
Yep.
So it's still a fluid situation, but please, start making calls, because I'll answer the call.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you the reality. And I'm fiscally conservative. You vote for me or you don't vote for me. That's fine. That's who I've been for 13 years, because I live in a community that I know the seniors live paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of poor families in Methuen.
Yep.
And the poverty numbers reflect that in the presentation from the superintendent.
They do.
Right? You have Holy Family Hospital. If that closes, the massive economic downturn in this community, I don't even want to
Well, we've already,
entertain that.
we've already backed the revenue out of the FY '25
Yeah.
plan. So,
And I think again, you're being honest
Yeah.
with us. I have to advocate, 'cause I'm a school committee member.
but in fairness to the superintendent, I want to clarify, so I don't perceive our problem anywhere near as significant as what Haverhill did. Right?
No, but I mean, it just, again, like, that was, Haverhill did it.
I'm not
If-
even
so if it's
suggesting
like-
all 42 of those positions be laid off. I don't want to be misquoted. All I'm saying is, we've got to roll up our sleeves here. We've got some tough decisions to make. And then, if the 42 number is correct, that, to me, would be the starting point. So where are those people? What are they doing? And then we as a committee make a decision. Can we afford to keep them or not?
So
And it's-
I can answer that question,
Yep.
because in the executive summary, in one of the bullets, I specifically addressed ESER 3 because of the question that you asked the last
Yeah.
time. There are two, I outlined it in the last bullet on the second page. In the ESER 3 funds, we specifically didn't put some, they were temporary, professional staff in ESER 3 for the exact reason you're talking about, because a lot of other districts did that, and we didn't want to do that. So there are only two professional staff teaching positions that did roll back over because of class size. We kept them in the budget. There are two teaching positions at the Timony, I believe, that we kept in the operating budget from ESSER. The 42 number that the mayor's referring to is we had half of our, so when COVID hit us, we moved from day-to-day subs to building-based educators, so that we could have consistent staff in the building who knew the routines. We weren't having people come in and out, right? A lot of districts switched from calling people who could work on Tuesdays and Thursdays to just having 9 or 10 people in the building who could actually be there and substitute and be part of the staff. And that has actually worked out very well for us. So we've maintained that. 2 years ago, we had all of the salaries for the BBEs in the buildings in our ESSER funds. This past year, we split it with the operating budget, so we now have put the substitute line back in our operating budget. So when you're talking about, that's a hard one, because that's not professional staff. There are two professional staff that are back in the operating budget. The other person I talk about in this bullet specifically is the director of facilities. We had him in ESSER 3 because we had earmarked $300,000 in ESSER 3 years ago for somebody to be the project manager to oversee the construction projects. There was a lot of one-time projects that were happening with those funds. And so we used that money to pay his salary. I have been transparent about that since the moment we did that it didn't make sense to hire somebody new for 3 years to do that who didn't know our district, right? So we had Bruce be the project manager. He's the director of facilities because he knows what he's doing. And that salary would have to go back when that ended on September 30th. And so those are the two teachers and Bruce Stella. The program assistants that we eliminated, they were 12 program assistants, right? And we had those in ESSER 2. Again, super transparent. We said those were going to be 2-year positions, right? The state recommended we put in positions that could help raise those reading scores, help raise what was going on with the instructional deficits from COVID. So we ended up moving those positions for one more year. We thought they needed one more chance. So we put them in ESSER 3. Everybody knew, all the people in those positions knew that there was going to be one more year. Those people haven't been laid off, their positions have been eliminated, but we have plenty of open program assistance positions, so everybody will have a position in the district who is in one of those literacy positions. So I get what you're saying about the 42, because payroll looks different, because there's people in those, but you're talking about the substitute line, the BBEs, that we split the cost during COVID, and now those, we have substitute lines now in all the buildings. We're going to keep the BBE model because we think that works really well to have somebody who actually knows the building and the kids and the staff. But as far as professional staff, that is outlined here on this bullet, exactly what we did. So
I would just
I don't know
request
who
that
to-
Ian sit with the CAFO and work through that so that she's on the same page you
yeah,
are.
perfect.
Right now, she's not. Right?
Perfect.
So,
We will happily do that.
Right.
Yeah, perfect.
hang on a second. Did you have something? My head was turned. I couldn't tell if you were. No. Okay, sorry. Remember to talk there.
So to piggyback from at one point. But for the fact that, remember Marilla talked about, I think Chelsea had a teachers, school committee and teachers union, if I'm correct?
Yeah, they signed on to it.
All right, so
Did what?
what I'm asking, because there are members of the union in the back here,
Yeah.
I'm asking, and I'm hoping the rest of this membership will say, can you sign on to our letter in support of that, or bring that back to your leadership? And because we would be happy to have that support, especially from my teachers. You guys are important to us too, and the fact that if one community's doing it, I'm asking, but I'm hoping the rest of these committee will ask for it. I'm not gonna speak on behalf of all of you, but for me, please sign on to the letter.
I'll be happy to share. I don't, I think, I know what you're asking. I think the people behind me probably don't know what we're talking about because they haven't seen it, but I'll be happy to share with the union officers, of what we're talking about.
Yep, that's,
Yep, yeah.
Member Keegan, first, sorry.
So, when my oldest was in kindergarten, class sizes were 34, and that was horrifying at the CGS. There was 34 students in that kindergarten class.
Yep.
And when my second one came in, we were still around 30. And my kids can read, but given the different dynamics, I would not want to see a class size over 25. So I guess when you're asking for direction,
Yeah, perfect.
I would say, I don't want to see a class size over 25 because I know what those class sizes look like. And
Okay.
34 kindergartners was unbelievable. You had kids everywhere. There was no room to move. It was terrible. So I would say, I would not want to see a class size over 25, especially in the younger grades.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to back you up on that. Member Keegan, obviously you had said earlier that you, if you had to make these cuts, and I don't, hope they don't happen, you'd start in the upper schools. But I hope we can start the discussion now on, there are some proposals still on the table that have not officially been removed from the budget,
Correct.
including things that will impact, I think, the day-to-day life of the schools, specifically how to support behaviors. And I think it's an important discussion we really need to get to. Now, I think we all agree, nobody wants the layoffs. Nobody. I've been able to see the difference when class sizes are reduced. We're dealing with some behavioral problems now. If you get some kids in more crowded classrooms, I can only imagine that some of those behaviors are going to escalate. So I think we as a team need to make some really important decisions, like, yes, there has to be, hopefully not, that L word, but we have to add something. We have to add a few things, I believe, to keep our schools safe. I mean, that's the priority, obviously. Ask anyone, what's the first thing for a school? Kids need to feel safe, staff needs to feel safe. But I hope we can start this discussion now about what is still on the table. I'm on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, here we go. So, okay, if I had known, I would have prepared a dance and a
Good
song.
transit. Thank you for the segue.
Yeah, here we go. So, on the table, one thing I would like to discuss, we talked about it briefly last week, the two proposals for two schools, two very different proposals. I've been giving it a lot of thought. And I do believe one of our priorities needs to be how to support, I think we have two priorities in my world: safety and literacy. And I think we don't think enough about how they go hand in hand. Because kids who can read and feel good about themselves and aren't lost in the class tend to behave better, right? So the literacy piece, if anyone's out there with $1 million, just think of the reading.
Never know who might be listening
You
tonight.
never know. Just think of the reading interventionists, the work that can be continued, because I don't think this budget, because of the limitations we're facing, as everyone has pointed out, has addressed what more we can do with literacy, to improve literacy rates. I don't, but this is the real world. So let's begin with the presentations, the suggestions on how we can support students and staff and family. So remember Willett mentioned that he supported the addition of the crisis counselors. So that would be the proposal for the CGS in Marsh, and then the RIS, which would be a little different model for Timony and Tenney. And I think it's something that we need to do something to support the behaviors. And when you look at those case studies, it's what it is. When you have administrators spending hours investigating, it means they're not going into the classrooms to provide the academic backup, to do the evaluations and even the informal observations, to be present. There's just so many things that aren't being done because they're stuck dealing with problems. So I think I tallied it up. It's over $300,000. Does that sound about right? Even with the freebies involved?
Yeah, so the
72,000?
You're close, yeah.
Okay.
The two crisis intervention
Yep.
staff that we're looking for at the Marsh are singular, one for the Marsh, one for
Right.
the CGS. And we have certain salaries that we've earmarked for those folks. And for those positions and the risk positions, we're not looking at Unit A people.
So these are unaffiliated?
These are unaffiliated, and let me explain why.
Okay.
Right? Because we're looking at staff who we're not talking about prep periods and duties, right? We need them to be on. And we also need them to be able to potentially serve and support after contractual hours, right? When we have students, might be kids are in a space and they need supervision until parents arrive.
Yeah.
Right? And so we have some staff in the district who are unaffiliated, who have this level of flexibility for us that we can call upon them for those crisis situations. I can't predict when I can't give somebody like that a schedule. I think that's the hard part, right? I can't give and say on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, here's your schedule, because that's not the purpose of these positions and the support that they're going to give. So we are looking at a little bit of a different situation. We have a crisis interventionist at the Timony already.
But that's part of the program.
It is part of the Choices program, and that's where we've modeled this from. The CGS and the Marsh have modeled the need and the job description from, it is a little different, but that person is unaffiliated, has a social work background, experience, not necessarily in a school, but has that experience working with children in a different setting. It works really well, right? So we've seen it be really successful. And again, that person's schedule is not stagnant and scheduled, right, on a day-to-day basis. So it really works for the school, and she's able to support not only the students, but the teachers, right?
Yeah.
To support the students' reentry back. And, I think that's a part too. I know that Ms. Prowetti and Ms. Gordon spoke a lot about, certainly with me, when we were going through this process, and a little bit here with you all, is there's gotta be some, right now, there's just not enough time and understanding for that connection and communication. Students are going back to class after a crisis, right? And the teacher is not quite sure what has happened, right? People are on to the next crisis, so that person's occupied. There's not that level of communication that I think these positions will help with. That was a big point that I know all four of them were really trying to make, is that communication back into the classroom with the connection with the teacher, right? And the administrators, again, there's one for 60 teachers and 700 kids at the Tenney and Timony. Those are challenging numbers to make sure we're connecting and getting that communication and strategies with. So that was part of it. A pretty big part of it, actually, too, is to make sure that they're there to respond, but that they can also bridge that support with the teacher when the student comes back. What precipitated that event? Or, you know, like, what are those strategies we can put in place? So that's where we have found it being very successful at the Timony.
So I just have a couple of follow-up questions and
100%,
a
yes.
comment.
I'm
Okay,
ready.
and then I certainly want to hear what everyone else thinks. So one of the positions, one of the schools, we would get a deal. Correct? We would not be paying for the program assistants. And we would not, at the CGS, Bright would be paying the program, help me out to make sure I get it, would be paying for the program assistants for 3 years. Okay? And a staff member currently there would be have her foot in two worlds almost, working with the
Yes.
program and
Servicing her
Servicing.
caseload. Yep.
Okay. Is that accurate? Did I get that right?
That is accurate. So now we're talking about
And now,
crisis and
Right.
risks are completely over here, and we have
Right.
the Bright pilot program at the CGS. Bright exists here at the high school
Mm-hmm.
already, and we're trying to figure out what that need is and what it looks like at the grammar schools. Mr. Crocker's here to add anything that I missed, because he's the one that worked with Ms. Peretti and went to the sites and tried to figure out what this could look like at the grammar schools for support. And again, the setting that we have at the CGS makes that the most adaptable right now to pilot this and figure out if this is something that our district, is it going to work in elementary and middle school here in Methuen, or is it not? And there are a significant number of students who need some significant supports, who, as I know I shared with you, I think Ms. Peretti did as well. We're seeing those students in, especially the upper schools, you know, is where we're focused a little bit, who are being hospitalized, who that wasn't typical in the past, and are just walking back into school the next day after being, you know, hospitalized for mental health issues, and walking back into an environment with 1,000 students in a building, and we just don't have that bridge. And so at the high school, we call it the bridge program, but we just don't have that opportunity to reacclimate a student back in and get to know what they need. And so that really was the pressing issue here, where we started to talk about this at our CSST meetings with the associate principals and principals.
If I could just add a point of clarification, the role you're describing is the definition of an adjustment counselor. So we're calling it a crisis interventionist, but it is the school adjustment counselor that we've been talking about for the last 3-4 meetings. It's textbook definition, the same thing.
So the Bright program isn't, though?
Right, no, but the
Okay.
crisis interventionist is.
Okay, yeah, we gotta, I know we
Yeah,
have
no,
like
I know
buckets of
where-
things. Yeah, and I think we put that on there. A crisis interventionist could have an adjustment counselor background, a licensed social worker. The current one that we have at the Timony, I think, is a licensed social worker, has that experience. I think the difference is that, and we have some, I know Mr. Crocker provided you all with some information. You know, we have staff in each building who have those licenses. They're all in Unit A and act as school counselors and actually service students, right? So they are serving in a little bit of a different role than me saying to them, they're a crisis interventionist now. Very different role than what I expect them to do as a school counselor. So we do have some with that license, 100%.
Sorry, I don't want to derail you.
anytime, Mr. Shabilia. So the dilemma is, we have a real need to support challenging behaviors, kids in crisis, the teachers who are dealing with it, and the students who've been exposed
Yep.
to some naughty behaviors or whatever, right? So how do we balance? So here's an additional cost. And I truly believe we need it. So now we're just adding to the amount of money that we're worried about. And I'd be curious, certainly would support this after a lot of thought, and I don't want to beat the dead horse, but I do have some concerns that two schools,
Yes.
when you read the description, at the Timony and Tenny, there's an opportunity for in-school suspensions. And I think those are incredibly effective with the right staff in place. Because the students would be learning, they'd be, here's your work, get to it. Teachers are in the building. In the old days, they'd pop in to make sure the kids were working. To not have that opportunity at the other schools does concern me. But I certainly would trust the decisions of the people who are in the thick of it. But if this comes back to bite us, I just want to be able to say, I told you so. But I think it's time for us to address what's going on in the schools.
Yeah,
And I would be interested to see what everyone else.
Yeah, and if I could just comment, I think that point is so well taken. You mentioned that briefly, but you mentioned it at the first meeting. And it is challenging, right? I set a task to the principals last summer to say, we know this is a challenge. You have to give us the data, the information. I'm not going to sit in front of a school committee and advocate for something. I know we need something, but I'm not going to dictate what you need at the high school, what you need at the CGS, because every school does have a very different dynamic, right? All of our schools, we provide the same things, but the schools are different. Size alone, right? Size, number of classrooms, how many kids are in a cafeteria, right? We've got different challenges at each of the 4 schools, different programming. I mean, that alone, right? So you have one school that has newcomers, not a lot of English-speaking kids coming in. You have sub-separate classrooms in schools. You have a lot of different dynamics in the schools. And I think, I told the principals to be very clear about what they were asking for and why. Where was their priority? And I don't want to miss, and they would be very upset because they're like, we want it all, but I get what you're asking. Okay, right? Because I think every school would like all of these things.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that if I said to Mr. Hill, how do you feel about a crisis interventionist? He'd be like, that's a good idea, right? But when we looked at the big picture and I really tasked them to, what is taking the most amount of time, what is the most support you need for your students and your staff, this is where they landed. And I honestly didn't even think they were gonna land, I didn't even think 2 schools would land in a similar place and 2 schools in a similar place. So that's sort of remarkable to me that that's kind of where we all started talking about where their priorities were, right? And so I get that. I have lived in the world of Methuen where everything has to be consistent and the same. And right now, it's part of me feels like we have to live in that uncomfortable place of, right now, I'm not sure we can do all of it all at once in every place. So is it better to have it in 2 schools and see if it works and provide that opportunity at the Tenny and Timony? Let's see what the tier 2 looks like. How does the crisis intervention look? Not assigned to a special education program. How does that crisis intervention work at the CGS in the Marsh? See how that works. Come back to the table and say, this is awesome, right? This actually really worked, and now I have more information and data to share to say, we need this in all schools, and that's a next year plan. I have to be comfortable with that, you have to be comfortable with that. It is a dance, and I recognize that, Ms. Donovan, that this is a place that we don't feel super comfortable in, but at the same time, this is also what the principals said they need as a priority. If there's a chance that they could have it all, they're gonna want it. They're gonna want both, right? And so I think there's also an opportunity here, what you just said, and this is, the principals are gonna be ready for this Friday when they meet with me, is how badly do you need this, right? Because are we ready to repurpose and pull people that we already have to make this happen? And if we are, we're losing something to gain something, but is that a priority that we think we can work with? That's a question I can't answer tonight for you, but that's a question I'm gonna be asking the principals on Friday.
I think that's a terrific question to ask, especially with the concerns.
I do too.
I'm looking forward to see what your response is.
Yep.
And while I have the floor, and then I'll stop, I do think there's also opportunities, and I know it's been discussed, for, across the board, like a Saturday detention program.
100%.
They do it at the high school. but wouldn't cost a lot. It would be something offered to all the schools. Not that you want to disrupt people's Saturdays, but sometimes it's a good way to, it's a
Yep.
good learning opportunity. So that said, I'd be curious to see what the rest of the board felt about this and, you know, how we're going to find the money for it. But thinking in that way, how can we repurpose, or what can we give up
We
to
have to
get?
reshift half,
Yeah.
whole. I mean, that's where, you know, that we're going to have a very creative conversation on Friday about all of this, right? Because we're going to lose things.
Yeah.
But there are some things we need. Because if I lose everything, we're not going to make any progress, and that's not, you know, we can't be in that position either. So how are we going to make this work, but also still help us progress and adapt to what we're looking at and faced with today, which is very different than what we might have been faced with 5 years ago.
I have to agree with what Member Donovan is saying. I think the behavior management is a key piece to getting learning going in the classrooms. I feel like we also have laws that tell us that we have to do stuff before we do out-of-school suspensions, and I don't feel that we have the capacity in any of the schools right now to be following those laws, and I'm very concerned that we don't have anything in place to discipline besides out-of-school suspensions. And so I feel like the Timony and Tenney model give us that opportunity to have in-school suspensions and do things before we do
Yep.
the out-of-school suspensions. And I want to know how the CGS and Marsh plan to follow the law of not having out-of-school suspensions as our default discipline. Because I'm very concerned that having it in two schools, while we're following laws in two schools, we're not doing it in the other schools. So I want to make sure that we're following the law for that suspension law in all of the schools, because I don't feel like we're doing it very well right now.
Fair enough, yeah. And I do think that, Member Donovan, to your point, that there has been conversation, not just this year, about how can we do things a little differently, like we have provided. We have built on those programs at the high school, the Saturday detentions, right? We've done things so that it doesn't disrupt the school day, might disrupt the student and the family, right? But it doesn't take away from them missing school and being in the academics, especially when the infraction doesn't match needing to be out of the classroom, right? And so we are thinking about what that could look like for the grammar schools. Just one collective Saturday detention for all 4 schools. You don't need it at every school, and have rotating staff, and then it's not as daunting, you know, for the staff that might support that. But how do you do that? What does it look like? How much does that cost? I think those are conversations that we have to dig into a little bit.
Member DeZoglia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So coming from an educator's perspective, I love this idea. I'm in Lawrence, we have in-school suspension. It helps us as teachers, especially if we're dealing with someone inside the classroom that is being very disruptive. That in-house, especially at my school, it's not just like, okay, you're going to in-house suspension. It's more of a cooling off room, per se. Like, you go there, you sit
Timeout.
there.
Yeah, like a
Yeah,
timeout.
timeout. Like a timeout perspective. And then once that kid is disengaged, like, it is disengaged with whatever the environment he is in or she is in, that gets the counselors to be able to go in one room, the principals could go into one room. Depends on how you want to work it. But also the thing is, as an educator, that is a great like, it's a great, it's what I'm looking for. It's a great alternative when you can't de-escalate it inside the classroom. The attitude is, we're here to teach. Let's get that person out of the room so it's not disrupting the other 20 students in there. So, as Member Donovan was probably gonna know that I was gonna support this. So yes, I absolutely do.
Thank you. So, Member Shabir, go ahead.
So, since we're talking about the guidance department, I guess, I mean, Dr. Kwong, you had said something earlier about adapting our I even wrote it down, adapting our strategies as our students' needs are changing. And going through the packet that was produced and looking at what we have as an allocation of staff, whether they be school counselors, adjustment counselors, or school psych in our buildings, I can't help but question, remember Willette's earlier point saying, you know, we have to support the crisis interventionists. On one side, I 100% agree with that because that person comes with the ability to de-escalate, to manage those crises, to see those problems through from a more clinical perspective. But then the first question that comes to me is, I mean, are we expecting our current school counselors to also de-escalate those same situations? And if so, why do we need another one? Or is it just because we're short-staffed? Which I know is a general answer for every question,
Yeah.
but yes, we are short-staffed. I get that.
No, that's a really good question. So I can start to answer that.
I'll start with that.
Yeah, if I can start to answer that, and if Mr. Crocker wants to add anything, but, you know, it's what's, they have the skills to do it. The concern is we do have so many kids that are receiving direct services from our school counselors that you see on this piece of paper, that when a student is in crisis and I remove that counselor who now has a service delivery schedule, and I remove that counselor for crisis intervention, right? Who now is part of a situation where the student is in crisis, and we struggle with this is the other part that is very real. We struggle with the counselor knows how to de-escalate typically with a student they've worked with, but when that doesn't work and it becomes more of an administrative situation and you're talking about restraints and you're talking about possible discipline, I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that go into this now, right? Now you're looking at somebody who's supposed to be the person who that student goes to for that, and I'm losing the, I need to find the word, but they go to that person to be their safe person, and they associate that person now when they're in a dysregulated state can also be challenging.
So I fully agree that.
So we're challenged
your
by a lot of
counselor
those
should never be
pieces.
restraining you because that's going to make for an awkward dynamic.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Our BCBAs, though, I do want to say, because we haven't talked about them a lot, but the BCBA, the Board Certified Behavior Analyst, right? We have at least one BCBA in every building. That person is incredibly skilled, de-escalating, restraining, right? Being the person who can, that's their training. They actually are incredibly trained to understand what the antecedent is, right? What the kids need to not escalate, how to de-escalate. They're pretty critical and play critical roles in the buildings. They typically are the first response to a crisis, but can't be the only person who responds, right? And so it's a balance of who is the right person to respond, so we're not losing that relationship that the guidance counselor has with the student, losing the, 12 to 20 kids that guidance counselor now has to send back to class because they're dealing with a crisis for 3 hours with one of the principals. It's that where we get stuck in this like, oh my God, now we're in this gray area of the counselor saying, am I going to respond to crisis or am I supposed to service these kids? Because now I feel like I'm not doing my job because I'm supposed to service these kids and that's part of my required responsibility. So it's not that they can't and it's not that they aren't. We are struggling with the fact that they have a very structured caseload. And when we remove them from that for a crisis that can happen whenever, with whomever, it becomes a challenge. It becomes a challenge. I don't know if I answered your question well enough, or.
So yes and no. I mean, but my understanding is, using MCAS as a recent example, some of those folks who are assigned to MCAS duty, be it proctoring, hallways,
Yeah, schedules
bodyguards
change,
in
yeah.
bathrooms, all that stuff. I assume the crises don't stop for MCAS.
No,
Right.
right.
The other caveat for me is Well, first and foremost, I want to say that I've gotten some feedback over the last 2 weeks that it appears that this is a witch hunt for guidance, which I haven't. It's
Me?
no, not from you.
Oh.
No, me.
Oh, you, I'm like,
Yes.
what do you, I don't even know what you're alluding to,
No,
but okay.
I got a message from someone who I didn't know, who said it appeared that this was a witch hunt, that I was out to get someone or whatever it may be. You know how it goes. But I wanna state, because I heard that, and this for me is more of a, how do we provide the best
Yep.
service to students, which I know John agrees with. I know that that's all of our goals, everyone in this room right now. So especially now where we're facing an economic conundrum, and I want to see, not that these people are good, these people are bad, because I know from talking to several of them across the district that I know personally what they're doing on a daily basis and how they survive.
Yeah.
And how some days are better than others.
Right.
But I want to understand, so I guess Mr. Crocker, since you're graciously at the podium,
Yes.
going through your chart here about all the folks, which was fantastic, thank you. I noticed that there are some folks on here that have clinical licenses, whether they be LI, LC, or otherwise. To maintain those licenses, they need supervision. How are we providing that?
So you bring up a really good point, and those are, I want to be clear that the licenses outlined on that chart are DESI licenses. We did not outline LICSWs, LMHCs. Those are school social worker roles. That is a license maintained through DESI.
But we have,
They may have, and I think you're correct here, knowing some of the people in the community, they might have an LICSW, some, that is not maintained through this district, that is maintained privately.
do you see that as an asset to our district?
It very well could be. I think it's worth explaining, because I very much appreciate the question that you've brought up, and it's a question I wish a lot of other districts have brought up, quite frankly, because we have created a staffing model here that is really unlike many. And there's a reason why I think there's an impression, and I get why that impression would be that why do we have these roles that are seemingly not clinical versus other roles that could be way more clinical? I get that, because there are a lot of communities that actually haven't updated their staffing model in 20, 30 years. The term guidance counselor, because it's a pet peeve of mine, friends, that went out of fashion in 1990. No joke. That's when ASCA, the American School Counselors Association, said, stop using the term guidance counselor, it's confusing for people. So I think that there's a public impression of what these people do that has fueled a lot of misconception. And on top of that, we've got these staffing model changes that haven't happened in districts for, again, 20, 30 years. We've fully realized these roles. We have looked at the subject matter knowledge requirements of these roles, the changes in education, training, professional development, the changes in the state regulations, and we've said, we're going to use these clinical roles in a clinical fashion. We're going to fully realize and leverage these roles. So I think when you take a hard look at these charts, and I'm not talking about like the list of staff, but the state regs, the SMKs, the training programs, the professional organizations across the state that have all come together and said, hey, there's confusion, we need to do away with that confusion. All of these roles can do clinical work. So that, I would just offer a thanks for raising that, because ultimately, it's a very unfortunate situation in most districts, because they are failing to leverage master's level clinicians to do work in schools when they already have them hired.
So I agree with that, and I fully acknowledge, and I think it goes in any field, just because someone has a license does not make them good at what they do.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, every time. But looking at the posting for the crisis interventionist, you have LI, LC, LMH, physical, clinical psych. how do we intend to hire one of those roles to fill this crisis interventionist if we can't provide them the ability to maintain their license?
I think it's a fair question, and it would be something that would have to be grappled with. And I will offer, and this is a statement I'll make around the definition of that role. To the superintendent's point, it is not that any of these roles that we currently hire cannot do the crisis work. It is that we're asking that person to do just that, only that, all day long. And that's a difference, that is a different kind of role. So I do not want to paint a picture where these other licenses can't do that. There was a desire for that to be the license outlined in that title, but it could be the case that another, in my opinion, there are other licenses that could fill that role for sure. But I think you bring up a point that needs to be considered. If that person is going to maintain their license as a private license, or rather a community-based license, the maintenance of that license would have to be conducted on a private basis.
So in the packet, there was the question about crisis intervention, courtesy of Member Donovan. I got some history on the MCI relationship that we had in the past. As I'm sure you're aware, that recently went a massive overhaul at the state.
Massive.
They changed everything, which the state tends to do every 5 to 10 years. But what I didn't see in there was kind of the utilization aspect. Are you frequently reaching out to, I believe it's Leahy's our partner?
Yeah, Beth Israel Leahy.
Whoever they are.
Yeah, they've changed their name 18 times.
48 times.
Yep.
Yeah. Are you reaching out to them? Are they responding within, I think is it 60 or 90 minutes there? I mean, are we tracking that? Are we reporting it? Because I know that they're held to a contract standard on that.
They definitely are, and I'll say this. We have used whatever version of mobile crisis has existed, because to your point, it's changed quite a bit over my time here. We've used them consistently forever, and that has changed quite a bit. We sometimes wait hours. We sometimes are given the phone call at 3 o'clock saying, never mind, we're not coming. That's just the reality that we faced over the many years. Now, that's not to say that I don't want to lean into the use of MCI. I think that it's a phenomenal service. I think that they are unbelievably overwhelmed because they're not attached to Methuen. They're attached to the region.
Right.
So they're responding to schools across several different communities. And I will say the rate at which we have staff responding to crisis far outstrips MCI's capacity. I will leverage them for all they're worth. Wonderful partner, and it's not enough. So
No, it'll never be enough.
it will never be enough. So I have to tag in Holy Family, Lawrence General. I have to tag in other providers that are associated with maybe a student's community-based therapist that they're seeing, and have a warm handoff to that provider. We're doing everything possible to cover all these crises. So I take your call out that, geez, why aren't we using them? We definitely are. We're using them for all they're worth, and it's just not going to be enough. But I'll continue to leverage that relationship. I actually had a conversation with their, I believe it was their director, maybe 2 weeks ago, just to find out what their update was, and not just on the MCI side of the equation, but it's our community behavioral health center. They have a lot of services, and we can route things there. Again, we're going to use Care Solace, we're going to use Cartwheel. We are going to leverage our internal staff, which I did provide some data there. Pre-spring screening, 1 in 5 kids in this district were receiving some degree of behavioral health care. That's outrageous. That's a lot. So I just want to be real about that I love our community-based providers, and it's not enough. So I'm on board with you. We'll leverage them for all they're worth.
So, I mean, I guess in closing, because I could go on, but I won't. In my vision, in my perfect world that I've created in my head that no one else lives in, apparently somebody does, I see the adapting our strategies to our students' needs as they change as it becoming a much more clinical mindset, unfortunately, given everything our students are facing in the world as they are, walking through our doors in the morning. Mm-hmm. And I guess I would push for consideration of how do we best utilize the clinical licensed folks to address those needs. And as we continue to evolve and face the unfortunate questions we're going to face over the next 4 weeks, whatever it may be.
I appreciate that, and
2?
I want to make sure that that there's a very clear understanding that I appreciate daily the reality that having a clinical mindset in these roles has to be the priority. It just has to be, and we've invested time, energy, professional development, training, clinical supervision constantly to these roles, again, to fully realize what they can do, because these training programs have changed, these roles have changed. You made a comment at a previous meeting that I really appreciated, like, no, it was a good one, just about this, like, I don't remember this being the kind of role that a counselor would fill in a school. It didn't seem like it was like that, and you're right, it wasn't like that long ago. That's just not the case. These roles have changed dramatically, and unfortunately, the public hasn't kept up with that change. We still see the 1970s version of what guidance counselors do. That's not the role of a school counselor, school adjustment counselor, school social worker. These are clinical roles. So I'm with you. We have to leverage these mental health staff, these master's level clinicians for all they're worth. And I think we need to honor that they're able to do that work. And I'll say from a statewide standpoint, geez, what if every district honored what these master's level mental health staff could do? I think that would go a long way to addressing the youth mental health crisis.
And I think if, as a state, we put that emphasis on, we wouldn't be facing a national shortage.
Sure, sure.
Thank you.
I just want to add one thing, so, and not really for you, John, so go back to Member Donovan's. So, oddly enough, I support, right? I just would want to have a discussion around what benefit does it provide on the back end? So if you've got a crisis counselor, and granted it's a small supplement here, right? What benefit to the administrator, to the classroom teacher, and I know I'm going to, so if it provides the classroom teacher with X amount less, problematic behavior, let's say, does that mean we could go to 21 or 22 kids in a class? I don't know. And I'm not suggesting we do that. All I'm saying is, there's a lot of work to be done here in the next 2 weeks before we get to that discussion. I would not want to, and I think John knows this, I would not want to cut anything mental health related, right? So you ask priorities. For me, I think you know what they are. It's mental health, and then it's classroom teachers, right? And then everything else is viewed after that fact, right? And unfortunately, that even includes administrators, administrative staff ratios and things like that. But I think, some of the things that we're doing, we've got to step back and take a look at them, like I said, and say, okay, here's the benefit that a crisis counselor is going to provide here. Here's the yoke it's going to lift off, whether it's the classroom teacher or the administrator in the building, right? So, okay, are there other things that that individual could support, or are they, they're maxed out? So there has to just be, to me, a conscientious discussion of what does it provide, right? And so I love that he said, let's come back and discuss this quarterly or whatever. I would definitely want to be seeing that, right?
I totally agree with you. I think, too, like, how do we gather the information to find out whether or not this is successful? What kind of data can you provide? I'm not quite sure, looking at these. I'm sure we could come up with something, I'm sure, like how many disruptions. Yeah. Oh, good, yeah, absolutely.
Well, and so, because there's, we're doing the same thing in the police department, similar, I won't say the same. So we just build up crisis intervention counselor. There's 2 out of every 3 incidents in the city. There's really a mental health issue, right? So, we've got, through a grant, we've obtained, I think it's 3 crisis intervention counselors, a CIT team, right, that are working with the police officers and responding to the calls. Now, they haven't started that yet, but that's the goal, to get there. And, in the back end, we're going to take a hard look at that and say, so how does that help us, staffing and police-wise, right? So, and I want to give you some level of comfort. This is not, even though it's hard for us to wrap our heads around, this is not unique in the city, right? And so I'll give you the case of the fire department. So in the fire department, we have not added a head since I've been mayor, not one head. We are now at a crisis point where we, by law, subject to mutual aid, we have to send ambulances to other cities. And we are now finding ourselves in a situation frequently where we need a fourth ambulance. We have 3 full-time ambulance crews. The crew is 2 people. And we had an incident the other day, thank God it worked out for the best, where we thought a gentleman was having a heart attack at Merrimack Valley Golf Course, and we did not have an ambulance free to get him. So all our firefighters are EMT certified. We sent a truck down there and they started treating them, but it took the ambulance 20 minutes to get there because it was in Lawrence on mutual aid, right? And when I say all 3 ambulances were elsewhere, right? One was in Methuen doing a job, one was in Andover doing a job, one was in Lawrence doing a job. And so, you know, we're trying to look at the fire department the same way and say, how do we address this, right? Because by law, we can't say no, right? Again, it's really an unfunded mandate when you look at it, right? And so I'm trying to, because what I don't want is people walking around this, oh, so there's layoffs coming. I'm not there. And it's going to take a lot for me to get to the L word. You know, I like to use that better. Because I just think we haven't, you know, lifted every stone and looked at everything we need to look at yet. And I know that's harsh, but the same thing goes through on the city side. You know, the only department we added heads to other than Methuen Public Schools last year was the Health and Human Services. And, I mean, I defy anybody, you know, John and I talk about it a lot. That was absolutely pure need of 2 heads, right? To address some of the issues going on in the city with our homeless, with our addiction, with all of that stuff, right? So I'm still relatively confident we can get there. I don't want to alarm the masses tonight and have everybody walking out saying, there's layoffs coming, pink slips coming, because we're negotiating in good faith, and I don't see that in the offing, right? So I just want to be sure. Yes, Member Willett.
Just very briefly, because we've been circling around, but 3 deal breakers for me on the budget. One is user fees. I will not entertain that. Removal of school resource officers. I will not entertain that. And thirdly, if there's any elimination of the crisis intervention proposal with the additions, those are 3 deal breakers. I will not vote for a budget.
Yeah.
Because the crisis intervention is so paramount.
Yeah.
We can talk about the metrics, we can talk about the data collection.
Yeah.
But if we don't do this,
Agreed.
what's the sense of us talking about discipline,
Agreed.
meeting after meeting
Yeah,
after meeting?
agreed.
So that's, I understand about the other portions of the budget. I dealt with that over
With
the
you, yep.
years. And to me, at times, is
Can you
top-heavy.
Can you expand on the user fees while you're talking? You said user fees.
I'm not interested in user fees. I've never been in
At
favor.
all?
At all. No.
Okay.
So like, I mean, again, I know we're talking about a compromise tonight, but
Yeah.
any new user fees,
Yeah.
like entertained at other communities, they do user fees for like,
You suggest any?
No, I think
Oh.
I'm hearing you.
Yeah, and
you
just-
don't want me to come back next Thursday and
No.
say, hey, a way we
Yeah.
can
Oh, okay, I got
offset
it,
it is by
okay.
adding
Yeah,
a
no,
user
no,
fee. I got it.
Yeah.
and I don't think anybody's even talking about
Yeah.
removing the school
Yeah.
resource officers.
I understand.
But I talk in
not talking
conjunction
about
with
moving
We
the
would never.
3 deal
Yeah.
breakers for myself on the budget.
Yeah.
Is the crisis intervention,
Yep.
I want that.
Yep.
Don't remove the school resource officers and not have user fees.
Yeah.
Other than that, I can work with other parties and,
The only thing I'd ask you to do is expand your SRO, right? Say school safety when you say SRO, because there's more to it than just the SROs, right? So there's some things we're gonna come to you yet that the superintendent and I have discussed with the police chief, that we know we believe we need to do collectively. I'll say it that way, right? And so it goes beyond SROs, but it's to allow us to sleep at night and not be worried about that eventuality. So I don't know if that fits or not. You can still say the SROs.
I
but-
think it's under public safety.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
understand.
That's the, you know,
Yep,
I would say.
I understand
yeah.
what you're
Yeah.
saying.
Public safety.
yep,
no user fees.
Yep.
And we need the crisis intervention.
Got it.
That's in a nutshell.
Got it.
Thank you.
Yep. Member DeZoglio, did you have something and I missed you, or no? Okay.
I don't know if,
Anybody else want to weigh in?
Mayor, do you need to acknowledge that
Member Maxwell has
is
joined us
with
remotely,
and if-
so any votes, Martha, from here on will have to be roll call. Hello, Member Maxwell, how are you? We got a wave.
I'm doing well.
All right. That cough earlier notwithstanding, we heard you cough, so.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, you poor thing. All right, anybody else want to weigh in before? You good, Dan? I'm good. Okay. All right,
Okay, we have our work cut out for us. You know, we'll come back on Thursday, May 2nd, and
Yeah.
we'll have sort of another adjustment, right? So
Yeah.
basically, this memo that you see, I basically move it down, we'll add, this is what we've done since, a new chart, and see where we land on Thursday to get closer to that number.
Yeah.
You know, I do, we'll see how next Thursday goes.
yeah,
You know, our timeline is tighter, actually, this year. The city, I think, is doing the public hearings the last week of May. We always have to do our approval, and we have regulations about how many days we have to post it publicly in the media for our final number. So that May 13th meeting, we do need to have a conversation for a final budget so that we
Yeah.
can present it, post it, and then have it printed and ready for the public hearing and the vote, and then to get the binders to the city as well. So
Yeah.
it's tight, but if we need, you know, we'll determine next Thursday if there is a need for another special meeting
So
with
it's-
one
yeah.
agenda item. We'll do what we can to get that in there, whether it's before the 13th, right after. You know, I may have a day or two I can play with, but the CAFO has already set the budget hearings at the city, so I have to meet that deadline as well.
yep,
So we'll work through that.
okay,
Okay.
Thank you all.
Next, yeah.
appreciate it. Moving on, may I have a motion and a second to approve the MHS parking protocols?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Member Shabilia, seconded by Member Willett. Discussion. Member Willett?
Very quickly, I just want to say thank you to the members for working on a compromise. Obviously, there were some members that wanted a total elimination of the parking
Yep.
fee, but working in concert in terms of a compromise, I'm advocating for that at this point. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anybody else? Okay, Martha, roll call it up.
Ryan DiZoglio,
Yes.
Mary Beth Donovan, Lori Keegan,
Yes.
Krista Maxwell,
No.
Daniel Shabilia,
Yes.
Kenneth Willett,
Yes.
Mary Beth Donovan,
Yes.
Mayor Neil Perry.
Yes. The motion carries.
Yes.
Nice
Thank you.
job, Member Donovan, on the way by. Okay. May I have a motion and a second to approve the 2024-2025 school committee calendar?
So moved.
Moved by Member Willett,
Second.
seconded by Member DeZoglio. Discussion. Seeing none, roll call vote.
Ryan DiZoglio,
Yes.
Mary Beth Donovan,
Yes.
Lori Keegan,
Yes.
Krista Maxwell,
Yes.
Daniel Shabilia,
Yes.
Kenneth Willett,
Yes.
Mayor Neil Perry.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Martha. May I have a motion and a second to approve the 2024-2025 school calendar, which I believe is being distributed as we speak.
So moved.
Moved by Member Willett,
Second.
seconded by Vice Chair Keegan. Discussion.
So can I just tell you what I'm passing out, just so
Yeah.
you know? So the calendar that you have here is typically how we have done the calendar. It's a little cumbersome and challenging and doesn't print nicely. I wanted to give you this draft. Martha has been working on a draft that looks like this with our dates, so it's on a one-page. We actually may have looked at a couple other neighboring calendars and asked them how to do it. I just think this presents itself differently. The only thing we would need on the, like a second page are the dates of the trimesters and quarter ends, so that would be on a second page. I want to basically say tonight, what you vote are the days and the calendar. The format, I'm sharing you, we're working on this is what we would actually post on the website to be easier for our parents and families and distribution. So nothing, the dates wouldn't change, the start, the end, the vacations, the days off, right? Nothing would change for what you're gonna vote tonight. It's just a simple format I wanted you to see that we're working on, just because we think it's gonna be better for everybody. I hope that makes sense to everybody. Okay.
I would like to comment on the calendar.
Sure. Chair.
Good.
She wants to comment on the calendar.
Oh, yeah.
The only discussion that I would like to have on the school calendar, and I know that it has a lot to do with contracts and teacher contracts and all that, I want to point out that we don't have celebrations in schools, which we are going to try and work on. I know that holiday celebrations. However, we do observe Good Friday, and that day is given off to our staff, and things like Passover, that's not given off. And, so I do want to point that out, just because if we're not celebrating holidays in school, then I don't see the benefit to having a holiday off. That favors one religion.
So I'm not going to answer for the superintendent. I'm going to throw a lifeline on Good Friday, because the mayor was mystified why we have Good Friday off, and I now know the answer. It's because it's in our CBAs. So
Reasons,
on
that's
the
one,
ci-
that's one
yeah,
big one.
Right.
Yep.
So on the city side, it's in 7 of them.
Yeah.
Because I, like a dope, drove into work Good Friday morning, and I didn't have my keys on me and couldn't get into the building, and I was like, what the hell's going on? Nobody's here. And then I realized, I called the chief of staff, and she said, it's Good Friday, man, we got no work. I'm like, oh, okay. So I don't know about the other holidays, but I could tell
Yeah.
you, that's how that one.
Good
emanated.
Friday, and thank you, Member Maxwell, we've had this conversation, and I know Ms. Keegan has some thoughts too. I think the two reasons, number one, it is part of all of our contract agreements, that day is a day off. But the second part is that we create, right, we have certain federal and state holidays that have to be off that are on this calendar. But we typically build a school calendar based on our community. So in here in Methuen, most of our community does observe, and I don't want to say all, because I don't know what the demographics are such, shows that a good majority of our demographics do observe the Christian holiday of Easter and Good Friday. And so we don't have a capacity of population of Jewish families and staff that would take the days off. And we have ways that we observe the religious holidays that anybody needs to take off for any holiday, right? If they need any of the Jewish holidays off for students and staff, we grant that and we give them the religious holiday. One of my concerns I have shared the past several years that we've had this conversation is that and districts have done it differently around us. There are some districts that don't observe any, right? They basically go to school every holiday regardless of the community. That's a community decision. I'd be concerned on two fronts. The fact that it's in other contracts is going to be a challenge right now for us to change that. And also, if I have a capacity of staff that ask for that Friday off for religious purposes, I don't have enough staff to run the district. They have the right to ask for that day off for religious purposes. I would be concerned about that. And so I brought those two things up in the past. It is certainly part of the conversation of how we build school calendars. Everything else on here is any required holidays and any days off we have on a Friday, Monday to observe is here. And I know that one.
I would just like to, I'd just like to say that if we're going to continue with that, and we're going to say that the demographic is, mainly Christian or whatever, that's great. And I'm not for taking away Good Friday. I would just like to not take away the other celebrations, and that will come with the holiday celebration committee. I'm aware. I just wanted to make it public that I am aware that it is a Christian-focused holiday, and we are not celebrating Christian-focused holidays because we have been told we are not allowed to celebrate Christian holidays. So.
Okay. Vice Chair?
So, for the past 2 years, I've also been an advocate for getting rid of Good Friday. There are 2 Good Fridays every year, one for the Eastern Christians and one for the Western Christians, and we only give the Western Christians their Good Friday. If it's in the contract as Good Friday, we should be giving both, as far as I'm concerned, or we should be giving none, because we don't give anything to any of the other religious beliefs. And to say that it's part of the collective bargaining contracts, to me, then why are we voting on a calendar? And I know that we have to vote on a calendar, but if it's going to be dictated by the contracts, then we shouldn't be voting on a calendar. It should just be given to the school district, and it should just be the way it is. We shouldn't be voting on it because it's already decided for us. So I will, again, as I usually do, vote no on the calendar, because I don't feel that Good Friday should be on there.
Got it? Member DiZoglio?
You go first.
No, you.
Oh, okay. So for the last 2 years, I've always been forward of Good Friday. I am a Christian in a majority Christian town. You could say we're a city, but the town. And I'm sorry, like in the ends of holidays, I have no problem adding acknowledgement of other holidays onto the calendar so people are aware of the like Passover and other things. I'm happy to add that. But to what the superintendent said, you can't stop a person practicing their religion. And if they all want to go out on Good Friday and say, I'm not coming in, it's Good Friday, the superintendent cannot stop them. That's against religious practices. And so if you want to take off the name Good Friday, you could play around with that, but I can still say that. But also, you could try to take it off the calendar and say it's no longer Good Friday, it's just a day off. To us Christians, that's going to be Good Friday, and we're going to say it's Good Friday. It doesn't need to be on a calendar to us to express our Good Friday. I'm pretty sure for a fact, and I've said this for the last 2 years, I have no problem adding other holidays because, frankly, we should be adding other holidays so kids and parents acknowledge other holidays and religions. We should be adding that. But, of course, that doesn't mean, and the superintendent just said, if someone wants to practice to our Jewish members, they get excused absences. They cannot, it is perfectly fine. We're pointing this out because it is just because the name is on the calendar. That's all it's doing.
Yeah. So I don't want to, do ring around the rosy. I think, I'm not suggesting we change to me, I'm going to tell you that I no longer have kids in school in Methuen, right? But the part that used to pain me the most is when they went back to school before Labor Day. And I look at this and I see, there's really one instructional day, no, two. I take that back. 2 before the Labor Day recess. And I guess, if I was a teacher or if I was the parent of a student today, what am I getting out of that day and a half, basically, right, that happens before Labor Day? Why are we, and I get it, it's the 180, but I guess I would appeal to all of us to kind of think about, a lot of bad things happened in the pandemic. I know this is going to be third line stuff I'm saying, but we learned a lot about communicating, right? I keep going back to that joke where the lady peers to her future self, and the future self says to her, invest in Zoom. And she says, Zoom? What the hell is Zoom? And obvious joke there is everybody uses Zoom now, right? I would almost rather see, no snow days taken and us use the capacity. So if we know a snowstorm's coming, granted, we don't always, but, we use snow days when we don't know. If there's a forecast of one, like that dreaded blizzard that we got the inch out of this year, then we have the students take their Chromebooks or whatever home and we have remote learning versus, adding 2 days at the beginning of the year, that I don't know, because to me, you start with 2 days with students, and then you stop immediately, and then you get a 3-day weekend. I'm not sure I see the benefit, and, I defer to, experts, in the back of, maybe there is. Maybe there's a lot of benefit to the 2 days, right? Are you saying yes? I am. Okay, so never mind. Everything I just said, ignore.
Yeah, I would also say that, this just goes to Member Keegan's point, some
Yeah.
of that is contractual as well
Yeah,
at this point.
it's
that we s-
contractual?
It is.
Oh, okay, all right.
It used to be
Double
a little
shut up,
bit,
Mayor.
yeah,
Yeah.
it used to be a lot looser when
Yeah.
we started and
Yeah,
after Labor
yeah.
Day and when the date fell. And so
Got it. Got it.
we've, a couple contracts ago solidified that it happens, it's always going to be before Labor Day. Teachers
Yeah.
come back, kids come back, everybody has a 4-day weekend.
Yeah.
But, I would point out with this calendar,
Yeah,
right, our last day without snow days is June 16th,
yeah,
which
that's
is a
great.
Monday. So we're pushing farther, we don't like to push farther into June.
Yeah.
And so, that there's challenges there because that's the week of Juneteenth, so that would be new, right? If we have some snow days, then June 19th is a day off. We wouldn't go to school on that day, so moving the days any farther into
No,
June
I
do
get it.
make me a little more nervous, especially, June 16th. This year it's June 14th, and we had some snow days, and we're ending on that Friday before, so this calendar is set back a little bit.
Yeah.
Our winter break is a little bit longer
Yeah,
than typical. We have a couple years where that will happen, where the time in between the Christmas and New Year's is just longer during that winter break, so.
Do we have Juneteenth off because it's a federal holiday?
What did it's hard to hear you, Kristen, if
She
you.
asked if we have Juneteenth off because it's a federal holiday.
Yes, schools would be
Okay.
closed. If school was in session, it wouldn't be, it would be closed. Our offices are all closed on June 19th. Yep.
Member Donovan, sorry.
Yeah, just an observation, throwing politics into the discussion
I was just
that
thinking the same
started with
thing.
religion. September 3rd is state primary day.
It is.
And there's probably no way around it, but I just want to put out there, is always chaos. A lot of parents kids don't come to school till after Labor Day. We know that, right? And it's just going to add to a little bit of the stresses of the day for everybody, where you have elections going on in some of the school buildings, and it really is like the first day of school in many ways. So I just want to, I'm sure there will be a lot of good communication telling families, expect a little chaos in the parking lots.
Well,
And
this year you have
everyone's,
November 4th as well.
well, we won't be in the buildings,
Not
though.
November 4th,
The kids won't be, the
Yeah,
staff will be.
yeah.
okay.
So I don't have, there's no way around it, I guess, but it's always a worry.
Excuse me, November 5th.
It's not on the calendar saying that it's
Oh, it's
off.
not?
No,
November
it's an open day.
Oh.
So I'm looking at it,
Oh, you're
that
right.
Tuesday, which is, it's going to be mobbed because it's a presidential election.
No, it's a full-day professional development day, so November 5th is not a holiday, we don't have students. It's a
Okay.
professional development day, we've always had that.
Where?
I'm sorry, on the one you're voting on, just
Yeah.
look at this as like a work
Sorry.
in progress.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Okay.
This is I just want you to see this for the format, look at the one in your packet.
Got it,
This
got
one
it,
we've
got it.
reviewed 19,000 times.
You mystified us.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This one is the one that has the dates that we have
We
had
surrender.
10,000 people look at, so.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. This is the
it's okay.
format we're looking at. We still have some work to do, draft, yeah.
okay.
So I apologize. So yes, the 5th is on there as a day. It's a professional development day. Yeah, we don't have kids in the building that
Got
day.
it. That's a good thing.
Yep.
Any other comments? All right. Martha?
Ryan DiZoglio,
Yes.
Mary Beth Donovan,
Yes.
Lori Keegan,
No.
Kristen Maxwell. Kristen Maxwell,
No.
Daniel Shabilia,
Yes.
Kenneth Willett. Mayor Neil Perry.
No.
4 yes, 3 no, it passes.
4 carries, yep. Thank you. May I have a motion and a second to approve the first and final read of policy number BE, school committee meetings?
So moved.
By member Willett, seconded by member Shabilia. Discussion.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
The only question I have is, it doesn't cover, it says that all of our meetings have to be here, and what about the joint meeting with the city council, which is oftentimes not here, and that's not covered in this policy? It says that everything has to be here.
Yeah, so we could, yeah, that's a great point. We could certainly add, vote hopefully tonight and add it with I put in that piece that if it's a joint, it may be at the Searles Building or here,
Yeah.
right? Because it really would only be those. Yeah, that's a good point. We didn't count for that. I'll add that to the top. 1, 2, 3, I can put a 4, if people are amenable to that. A
Yeah.
4, if there is a joint city council, school committee meeting, it may be held at. And the
Yes.
time may be an agreed upon time. It
Yeah.
might not be 6:30.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I would
Yes.
just note that instead of saying it'll be held at City Hall, just.
At a different location.
Different location is.
To cover
in
us.
accordance with the posting, just in
Yeah.
case we end up at the TV studio or wherever.
Totally get it, yep.
And when I read it over the weekend, the only thing I took down, Superintendent, you'll like this, is we have to strive to make sure the meetings finish by 10 o'clock.
That's why.
Right? I mean, it's there in red, yeah, right.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Which I'd like to give you the 1-hour warning right now.
Amen. I'm there.
Yeah, and I do want to just share, the why behind that.
Yeah.
Two
Please.
things, right? The building does close at 10. I don't have staff in the buildings after 10. So if we are going, I'm either paying somebody after or have to find somebody that can stay. And we don't always stay after, but 10 o'clock is when the building actually needs to be locked up. And also, our students legally can't work past 10 o'clock, right? So we haven't had an issue, because the couple meetings we've had that have gone past that have been executive sessions and they've left. But I am concerned that if we do an executive session first and we go this late, we do all need to be out of the building at 10. That's why I put the time change in there. And I did consult with MASC to call and say, what is within our purview? And the woman was fantastic and suggested, you absolutely can do that. Make sure you put language in here that says, what do you do when you didn't finish? That's what the school committee has to have in the policy, is the process of, if there are 7 items left, instead of us, it didn't feel great the other night when
What's
we were
the
like,
continuation?
run through quickly the last 7 items. It made everybody uncomfortable, because we've never really had to do that.
Yep.
What do we do next? If there are items that can wait, the school committee can vote to put them on the next agenda, and that's how we start the meeting. Or give yourself that, and she made that clear, give yourself, if there are items that are timely, then make sure you put there that the school committee knows that you can have a special meeting to approve contracts or whatever it might be that timely, but you still give that 48-hour notice for posting. So I did get that from MASC, because I said, I don't know what to do in this situation, it's just odd. And I think we consulted with the city council secretary too, and she's like, we just go until we're done. And I was like, well, we're not gonna stay here until 1 o'clock to do that, but. So that's the why behind this, and I know we just updated this policy, so I apologize, but I think these are really
an important
important
point.
notes to make for the why behind it, and just, our time spent in the meetings, and making sure we have a process if we don't finish.
Sure.
I had a quick question.
Go ahead, member Willett.
Just like, hypothetically, if we started at 6 instead of 6:30 for our meetings and bought us an extra half hour, because we do presentations, we have the SOAR, certain salutes, student recognition. If we did 6 o'clock, would that be something too that would help us on the back end? I mean, that's, because we're going to the clock
Yeah.
very much so.
Yeah.
I mean,
So-
this end couldn't change, right? This end has to be what it is. I mean, the start time is completely within the purview of the committee.
Correct.
I mean, we had 6:30 voted in several years ago, and we couldn't change it because of people's schedules. So we're at the will of the committee on the times.
Yeah.
Can I add that go ahead, Mr.
Can we, I see where you're going.
Friendly amendment?
Friendly amendment, but instead of changing it to say 6 o'clock, can we say as published in the required posting? Because
I love that idea.
there may be meetings where we don't need the extra half hour, maybe we want to get out of here a half hour earlier, which I fully understand. But maybe sometimes we start at 6:30 because we have things going on before, and maybe sometimes it's at 6.
I would
I
rather
don't
just
wanna-
be consistent.
I don't wanna
I'm going
force
to
us
offer
into
as
something.
a friendly amendment, accepted or not, it's going to be 6 o'clock. I would add that as an amendment. Yep.
I would just say that just for people watching it, I think
Yeah.
being consistent with the
Consistent,
start
yeah.
time, I think would be important.
A little scheduling too for the staff and
So
the
there's-
students that do it, ahead of time so they know the meetings happen. I mean, they have been fantastic because I've had to ask them to switch schedules and be here next Thursday, and we have enough flexibility there, but for the consistency, at least we know the times. That would be my only,
So my only
6 o'clock
feedback
sounds
is.
great, though.
The friendly amendment is on the floor for 6 o'clock, is what I heard you say. I just want to so, right now, this is for the FY '24-25 school committee calendar. It would not touch the rest of the meetings that are scheduled right here.
You're right, those are
I don't
already
want anybody being confused, right? So,
We can hope. That's all.
so there's a friendly amendment on the floor to change the start time of the school committee meeting to 6 PM. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Member Donovan. Any further discussion on that? Go ahead.
Would that change the end? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Go, Chris, go.
Would that change the end time? I know you said that we have to be out of the school. You don't have the staff by 10. So would that change the end time to 9:30, or are we still okay with
No,
10
it's
o'clock?
still
we're
would be
still okay
10.
with 10. I still have to have an
Okay.
end time at 10.
Yeah.
Whatever
Okay.
you guys, I mean, hopefully we won't, the hope is,
Yeah.
if we start at 6,
Yeah.
remember Maxwell, that we wouldn't have to
We're hoping we're
vote
going
at
to hit
9
our
o'clock.
groove, Kristen,
Yeah.
right? Zach?
Right.
Yeah.
No,
Members
good
Zagor-
question. I wouldn't have to change that part of the policy. It just would help us to hopefully not get there so often. How about that?
I'm fine with that, but the problem was with the beginning of the new school year. I know I'm the only teacher here, but 6 o'clock might be pushing it because sports after-school programs.
Yeah.
So that's why I will probably be late. So I know maybe to some people that might not be a big deal, but, I'm just saying I'm gonna vote no on it because I don't know the
That's fine.
scheduling.
Yep. Any other discussion?
Can I just ask clarifying?
Go ahead.
Right, so the 6 o'clock time would pertain to the 24, beginning in 24 calendar? So I'll have to indicate that on the policy when we post it.
Correct.
But the rest of it, we need to be effective
Stays.
immediately, right? Like, that's what okay. I'll have to post it such and make sure there's a note on that. We'll
Yeah.
make sure. Okay.
Martha?
So this is a roll call on the friendly amendment?
On the friendly amendment. the
For
first,
6
yeah.
o'clock,
Yep.
because we still have to do another amendment on the
And there'll
ad
be a
number 4.
second, right?
Yep.
Ryan DiZoglio,
No.
Mary Beth Donovan,
Yes.
Lori Keegan,
Yes.
Kristen Maxwell,
Yes.
Daniel Shabilia,
Yes.
Kenneth Willett,
Yes.
Mayor Neil Perry.
Yes. Motion carries.
Yep.
So the friendly amendment carries. Now we need to vote to accept the policy as friendly amended.
So moved.
Moved by Member Willett.
Before we do that,
No,
Sorry.
do we need to do a friendly amendment to add in the?
Yes, that's what I meant. Yeah, you have to do another amendment to add the number 4 in the event of a joint city council school committee
Oh, I'm
meeting. It
sorry.
may be
Yep.
held at a different
I
location.
missed that, yep.
Yep.
So moved.
So,
Second.
there you go. Moved by Member Shabilia, seconded by Member Willett, in reverse. Any further discussion on item number 4, joint meetings with the city council? Hearing and seeing none. Martha?
Ryan DiZoglio,
No. Oh, I'm sorry. Can I,
Yes, sir, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, yes.
Mary Beth Donovan,
Yes.
Lori Keegan,
Yes.
Kristen Maxwell,
Yes.
Daniel Shabilia,
Yes.
Kenneth Willett,
Yes.
Mayor Neil Perry.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Shabilia. Now we need a motion to approve the twice amended policy BBE, school committee meetings.
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Member Shabilia, seconded by Member Willett. Any further discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. Martha, take it away.
Ryan DiZoglio,
No.
Mary Beth Donovan,
Yes.
Lori Keegan,
Yes.
Kristen Maxwell,
Yes.
Daniel Shabilia,
Yes.
Kenneth Willett,
Yes.
Mayor Neil Perry.
Yes, the motion carries, thank you. We will now start the discussion of the nomination election process for the City Charter Commission representative for the school department. Now, I would like to clarify something here. So the way the ordinance was put forth by the city council, it does not have to be an election of one from the school committee. The mayor has to pick 5 people, and the preference was that somebody would be from the school side. So, but I am happy to use the brain, because I'll be honest, I'm struggling, for 5 people. I'm thrilled to have you guys think about it, but it can't be anybody who's actively serving on the committee, because no elected people are allowed. It would have to be somebody, and it's gonna take some time. I gotta be honest with you, right? So the meetings are gonna come pretty quickly. Yes?
I would just offer this, because I think we had an excellent format for the appointment of the school committee
Yep.
member, is to offer that as a format. If someone is interested in serving on the Charter Commission. But the thing I have to emphasize is it has to be a representative of the school department.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So, I mean, I have a natural choice, but I'm not sure I should be willing to do it.
yeah.
And I think it pigeonholes us, because I have someone who might not be affiliated with the school department anymore,
Yeah.
but someone who served on the Charter Commission in previous years.
Yeah.
It might add some, longevity and experience to the process. But like, what is the definition of a representative of the school department? Is it someone who is affiliated with a PTO? Is it a parent? Is it an employee?
So
Is
they
it an
didn't
administrator?
specify?
Oh,
And
ugh.
So I don't,
That's a natural process,
but
Methuen.
but I'd say, any teacher could, we could turn to the superintendent and the assistant
That
superintendent
would
to say.
be my preference, and, I would love to nominate the superintendent, but I don't want to compel her to serve, and I think it creates a little dynamic to it.
Well, with sympathy for the
I would
the
love to.
hours, I would not ask her to do that, but
Yeah.
that's your call. If you wanted to do it, you're welcome to step up. It's gonna take some time, right? So there are gonna be meetings, and they're gonna be at,
I so appreciate that. I would appreciate not being the person to sit on it.
I tried.
Yeah.
I tried.
And I would say,
Yeah.
I mean, right, I am a resident, I get it, I understand it. I do think there's somebody else that could probably give it the time and attention that I might not be able to give it. And that's true, and I appreciate your comment, I appreciate, it makes sense, but I'm not sure what it entails, and if it is time, I'm not sure how much time I could give
Yeah.
between now and October to do that kind of work.
So
So
that's
I-
the problem I have, is like, if you had a non-representative of the school department, that would open up to people who maybe served as prior on school committee or city council.
Yep.
Or who has done volunteer work or served on commissions. And then we could have like an open interview process, but it kind of like, now we need to have a representative of the school department, and we don't even have a clarification.
Yeah.
Is it really an employee? And we're directing an
Any
employee.
one of the categories you just described could be it, though.
It could be
Just-
anybody?
It could be a former school department employee, it could be a former city council member, it could be, I'll give him an example, I don't want to shock her. On my list of people to ask is her husband, right?
Wow.
Well, and I just say that not
Hope
to
he's
shock
not
you.
watching.
No, well, so he's a guy who's been involved in various aspects of the city government. So you don't want to have, you don't want to put somebody up for something that they're going to hate, that they get blindsided, and, this really stinks, right? So the Charter Commission, my guess is, Ken, there was a Charter Commission formed in 18. It did a lot of work. Much of what I read was pretty good stuff. And then there was a failure in the handoff between the commission, Mayor Jujuga, and the city clerk at the time, and the stuff did not get to the Secretary of State. When it did get there, it didn't get fast-tracked, and so it fell by the wayside and never got voted on.
Yeah.
Right? So my guess is, there are some people that are gonna be named that will have been part of the previous Charter Commission, and they will push hard, I would assume, let's start by taking a look at what we proposed last 2018 is not that long ago. So, it can be any one of those categories. And you don't have to name it tonight. We've got a couple weeks here. So if you want to take some time and talk to some people, and that goes out to anybody, you're welcome to do that.
Because I thought the format, how we did,
Yeah.
it was fantastic.
Yeah.
And we allowed someone to give personal remarks.
Sure.
And then we made a final determination.
And
So-
we can do that, we can
Yeah, I would
call
rather
people in
have
and-
that approach as opposed to us working, nefariously in a back room with
Yeah.
cigars, smoking.
Please don't use the word back room.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And I wanted to spell that immediately. I want this open, transparent, allow people to give speeches. I just wanted the clarification.
So let's put it like this, so if any of you have somebody that you think could, and honestly, it says at least one has to represent the school. We might find two, right, that we say, those two are really good, right? It doesn't preclude us from putting them on the commission, right, the way it's written. It's
Okay.
written very,
Yeah.
very loosely.
And that's not good, though.
I know.
That's not good, Mr.
Yep.
Chairman.
So is the action here for each of us to go back and for the next meeting to come up with nominees for,
Okay.
are you okay with that? Will-in nominees, yes. Yeah, dragging them in, yeah, yeah.
I can feel Tom having a meltdown.
Yeah, don't tell him. He's gonna see it on public television, the poor guy. Okay, so the
Okay.
agreed upon action is, we'll take that up, and that would include the superintendents, assistant superintendents. If there's somebody in the schools, a teacher, somebody who really would like to, participate in this, say like a civics teacher or somebody who could really gain something from it by participating, it'd be a great idea, right? So we'll hold that till next session, thank you. Are there any, oh my God, third rail stuff coming up.
I have
Yeah.
one question about it.
Yeah.
How old does the person need to be?
How what?
How old? Because could it be, say, a senior in high school who's 18 that was interested in
Ooh,
civics?
that's a great question.
So
I don't
can it-
know. It's not spelled out in the
So if
resolution.
there's some
They did
student,
not,
you
We'll just say registered voter
yeah,
Okay,
of Methuen.
yeah,
Yeah.
so an 18-year-old would be okay?
I think so.
Okay, thanks.
Be an eye-opening experience. Flip my civics teacher, somebody who's like an AP, be a great learning experience.
We can
right?
talk about the be nice rule.
Yeah, Rafi Takesian, yeah.
Yep.
All right. So, moving on, and I want to talk, so, I got a lot, I got calls, and I apologize, I never got back to poor Ryan. The MPS Audit Subcommittee, so the city council wants to put two bodies on it. They would like us to put two bodies on it because I have to sit on it, right? So our task, are there nominations? I know that both Ryan and Kristen have reached out to me. The nomination process is up to this committee on how you do it. If I had my druthers, I would pass the chair and let somebody else gavel the audit subcommittee, but city council voted against that. So I throw that out there for discussion before, we nominate anybody. Member DiZoglio.
I'm just gonna, I'm figuring everybody kind of knows what they're gonna do tonight, but I would just wanna, this was my campaign promise for 3 years. The mayor and I will attest to this all day since the very beginning that we've taken this office, that I've been asking for an audit, especially the climate
Yep.
part of the audit. That's why a lot of the teachers in the back here know me, because I've told them several times I think we need an audit in the schools. Not just finance, but wondering why there was so much turnaround, why if our teachers are happy, our students are happy, and do it just like we did with the police department. Unfortunately, I did not make it to the joint meeting. I was away in Lexington for a few days. But I read over the audit. I am happy with the audit. But this is something that and again, the mayor will say, and a couple of residents will say, that this is something I'm very passionate about. And I know I can do this job very well as a representative of the school committee, because this is something that I've been pushing for 3 years.
Yes, yes, you have.
Thank you.
I just want to make one other comment, though. I want to get people, so audits are not hit pieces. So I want to make crystal clear what the audit is to me. And the audit is to identify all the things that we do really well and to build upon those, and to identify the things we don't do well and to give us alternate paths on how we could do well in them, right? I don't intend to see, any hit pieces come out of this audit. That's not, how do I say this publicly without getting in trouble? One of the things that I worry about is the first thing I did when I was mayor was do an audit of the police department, and I worried that it set a tone. And we did an audit of the DPW, and I sit here before you and tell you, and my good friend and I probably disagree, the audit for DPW did everything I had hoped it would. It gave us a path to right the ship, if you will, right, to do things better. And I point out, certain hiring positions they talked about. We hired one individual, Felix Garcia, who's killing it, knocking it out of the park, right? So the audit has paid dividends. I don't want people ensconced in the theory that an audit is a negative thing. It is not. It is not intended to be a negative thing. I've done audits all my days at Raytheon. They've primarily focused, like I said, on paths to doing better, right? And that's all I see this audit doing for us, right? I want to make sure people understand. So we don't want to make this, and even in the police audit, I'll tell you that. And those results are public. You can go look at what I'm saying and see that it's true. If, an officer complained about a specific incident or discipline or this or that, then that was taken as a note. If a large contingent of officers talked consistently about a specific topic, then it became something that had to be approached, right? So you have to understand, in audits, you're gonna get people that are unhappy on occasions, and they're gonna wanna express those views, and they have a right to express those views. But I don't want people expecting, the audit to be turning a stone, this is not a catch-all for the superintendent or her staff, in my view, right? This is, I'm 4.5 years into this job. We've made some progress. I'll be candid, I certainly would like to see the literacy rate go better, and I know you would too. So I'm willing to have somebody outside come in, take a look at what we're doing and say, maybe you try this, maybe you do this a little bit differently. So, whoever gets nominated for the audit committee, I just want to have them in the right framework and not be sitting there thinking that we're going to be sitting there, shooting arrows into people. Yeah.
So to
Yeah.
fix that, no, the reason why I said use the police department example, because a lot of the good came out of it.
A lot of good came out of it.
All right,
Yeah.
that's what I'm looking, I'm not looking at the negative
Yeah.
side of things.
Yeah.
All right, and if people think that is, well, that's not what I was looking for.
Yep. Peace. Ken?
I'm going to make a motion for some nominations, because
Please.
we were in attendance at a meeting for an hour.
Yeah.
Discussing these issues.
I know.
It's late in the hour.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion for, first, it's going to be member Mary Beth Donovan. I'm going to make that, nominate her.
Yep.
Okay, that's the first.
So that's the first nomination.
Okay.
Are you willing to accept the nomination? Yes. You are?
Okay.
Okay.
And the second one will be member Shabelia.
Shabelia, are you willing to accept the nomination?
I am.
Okay, so we have two nominated members who are willing to accept the nomination. Do we have any other members who would like?
Second for them?
I'm sorry?
Does we need a second for them?
Yeah, I think we do. I screwed that up.
I'll
My-
second both of them.
Okay, thank you for saving me some paperwork. Do we have any others that want to be nominated?
I have a question.
Yes,
Can you nominate yourself?
yes, you can.
I would like to nominate myself.
It's okay.
Uh,
Maxwell has nominated herself,
I will second that.
seconded by Ryan DiZoglio.
And then,
And are you willing, hang on, are you willing to accept the nomination if you're the member selected?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Ryan.
and I would like to nominate myself.
Yep. Do I have a second on that?
I will second that for Brian.
Did you second it? I couldn't hear, I'm sorry. Yeah, Okay.
I will second that.
okay. Second it, and are you willing to serve if selected?
Yes.
Okay. So we have 4 nominations. In the interest of time, I would suggest, before we have any more nominations, we're gonna have to go to a vote process on this. So, Martha, how this is gonna work, and stop me if I'm wrong, is go around twice, I think?
Do we have a discussion on the nominations first?
I'm A-okay with that, yes.
Oh, okay. I've been dreading this vote for like 2.5 weeks now. I look around the table and knowing all of you in some extended capacities and some for the last 3 months, I know that every single person at this table brings a valuable asset to that audit committee. And when Member DeZoglio said earlier that I think he thought a lot of people knew how they wanted this to go or what they were going to do, I can honestly say I didn't, because, and I've had this conversation with Member Maxwell and Member Donovan over the last 2 weeks, I can see a positive and negative to everybody. Unfortunately, it can't be all of us. So although there'll be 2 of us that are going to sit at that table, I still view that as a centralized effort. No matter who the 2 are, it's a centralized effort. I've been a part of more RFPs than I can even count, and unfortunately more audits from federal agencies and everything else than I can count. And it's not the people who are sitting at the table, it's the collective brain trust behind them that are driving those conversations at the table.
Amen.
So I want that out there, that no matter what happens, it's not a negative reflection on any of us. So
Agreed.
that's my 2 cents.
And I think you make a very valuable point there, though, is whoever goes on the committee, it's incumbent upon them to regularly bring back to this school committee, okay, here's where we are, here's the point we are in the audit, here's what we've discussed, here's issues they've raised. They're gonna probably come to us and say, how can we get more information here, there, everywhere? So there's a lot to it, but I don't want the school committee to think that they're out of touch, right? Even though it's only 2 people. And I say it again, and if I could, I would stand down, right? Just to have some fresh eyes looking at it, and, not necessarily from a school perspective, so that, it's not, I participated in 2 audits already, since my tenure as mayor. So I defer to the rest of you. I just got asked a question, is it 2 or 3 people? Somebody texted me, and it's 2 because I'm the 3rd. So we have to watch the quorum rules, right? So at 3, we're on the cusp of it, right? And I don't count as a city council member, so I come on the school committee side. So we have 4 nominations.
If I may ask
Go
one
ahead,
quick
please.
question.
Yeah,
If-
go ahead, that's all right.
If you have communicated to the council that you want to be excluded from this,
I have.
was the edict that you couldn't?
Well, no, so their perspective is, and this is probably, this happened last year, so I'm going into the way back. It was the last council, not the current council. So the discussion started around who was gonna pay for the audit. That's where it began. Yeah, and that's over. The city's gonna pay for it. And that was voted on by the previous council. But they voted that the mayor and 2 representatives from
Okay.
the city council would go to the audit, right? So, is what it is. It's just like this. Whoever goes to the charter commission, whoever you come, I give you this. I don't, for the life of me, understand why the mayor has to be the chair of the school committee. The day for that is coming. The mayor should be part of the school committee, but he or she should not have to be the chair, right? And that's just common sense to me. So I throw it up to
Excuse me,
you guys.
Mayor, I
Yeah.
apologize, we need to take a vote to go past 9:30.
I thought it was 10 o'clock. Did we just?
Not yet.
All right, next year, all right. All right, so we need a vote to extend past 9:30.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair, seconded by Member Shabilia. All the, oh, shot. You got a roll call.
Zoglio,
Yes.
Mary Beth Donovan,
Yes.
Lori Keegan,
Yes.
Kristen Maxwell,
Yes.
Daniel Shabilia,
Yes.
Kenneth Willett,
Yes.
Mayor Neil Perry,
Yes.
unanimous.
Made it in the nick of time, 9:29. All right, thank you, Martha.
You're
All right,
welcome.
so I'm a little, and I throw this out to the committee. So we have 4 members nominated. Any one of the 4, I would be thrilled to have on the audit subcommittee as a member of the school committee. So how do you want to do, how do we do this? Do we just do a voting process, or?
Yeah, go in order of who was nominated.
I'm sorry?
Go in order of who was nominated and just vote.
Okay, so the first person nominated was Member Donovan.
Excuse me, Mayor, do we need to close nominations?
So moved.
We do, you're right, thank you. Thank you, Member Willett, Member Shabilia. We don't have to do a roll on that, though, do we? We don't have to do a roll call on closing the nominations, or do we?
Yeah, we should do a
Do-
roll, I think, yes.
It's roll call votes.
Ryan DiZoglio,
So,
to close nominations. Mary Beth Donovan?
Yes.
Lori Keegan?
Yes.
Kristen Maxwell?
Yes.
Daniel Shabilia?
Yes.
Kenneth Willett?
Yes.
Mayor Neil Perry,
Yes,
unanimous.
okay. So the first member nominated was Mary Beth Donovan, and I'm,
quick question. So because there's 4, it still has to be the majority vote of each member, correct? That's selected, right?
say that again?
Yeah, okay, they can vote for themselves. So
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah,
You ready?
yeah.
So you have Mary Beth Donovan was nominated, and it was seconded by Member Keegan.
So you got to do a roll call vote, sorry.
That's the first one. Ryan DiZoglio?
because I'm a nominee, no.
Mary Beth Donovan?
Yes.
Lori Keegan?
Yes.
Kristen Maxwell?
No.
Daniel Shabilia?
Yes.
Kenneth Willett?
Yes.
Mayor Neil Perry.
Yes,
Okay, so that one is 3, 4. Okay, so then we'll go to the next one, and then we'll see who gets the most votes, right?
that passed though, right?
That passed. That's good.
Okay,
That is,
so we're just going to do it till it passes then? Is that what we're doing?
Well, we'll do all 4, but if they all end up passing, then we gotta get slapped around by the people in the back of the room, so.
All right, so now we're on.
Member Shabilia.
Dan Shabilia, seconded by Lori Keegan. Ryan DiZoglio?
Because I'm a nominee, no.
Mary Beth Donovan?
Yes.
Lori Keegan?
Yes.
Kristen Maxwell?
Yes.
Daniel Shabilia?
Yes.
Kenneth Willett?
yes.
Mayor Neil Perry.
No,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yes, 2 no, passes.
this is gonna be wild.
2, 3,
I can see this coming.
5, 2, 0. The next one is
Now, Member
Kristen Maxwell.
Yep.
Seconded by Ryan. Ryan DiZoglio?
Yes.
Mary Beth Donovan?
No.
Lori Keegan?
No.
Kristen Maxwell?
Yes.
Daniel Shabilia?
No.
Oh, no, yeah.
Kenneth Willett?
Present.
Mayor Neil Perry.
Yes,
So we have 1, 2, 3 yes, 3 no, and 1 present.
coming up better than I thought, so,
So that does not pass then, right?
no, it does not.
Okay. And then we're on Ryan, who was nominated himself, and Kristen Maxwell seconded his nomination. Ryan DiZoglio?
Yes.
Mary Beth Donovan?
No.
Lori Keegan?
No.
Kristen Maxwell?
Yes.
Daniel Shabilia?
No.
Kenneth Willett?
Present.
Mayor Neil Perry?
No,
1, 2, 4 no, 2 yes, 1 present.
so I just want to explain my no's. I have confidence in anybody who could do it, but there were only two people could do it, so I could, in my mind, I could only vote yes twice. So after I voted yes twice.
And
it was done.
Mr. Chairman, too,
Yeah.
like, I wish we had a legal advisory.
I know.
That excused you, because it's a separate branch of government. You have an executive branch, legislative branch, and this is an elected school committee.
Yeah,
So I thought you would be separate from the process
Yeah.
anyways. So,
that's not the way they laid it out, yeah.
oh, geez, oh,
Yeah.
what a
That
shame.
would be easy. Okay, thank you guys for that, and well done. We avoided the rigors of 2 years ago when we had the vice chair stalemate. I still have nightmares over that. Is there any other business from the committee?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, well, we're gonna, yeah, not quite yet. With no further business to discuss at this time, may I have a motion and a second to adjourn the workshop business portion of the meeting of April 24, 2024, and go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Member Shabilia, seconded by Vice Chair Keegan. No vote yet. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation, if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of a public body, and the chair so declares all units. We will not reconvene into open session at conclusion of the executive session. Is there any discussion on this? All right, roll call vote. Martha?
Ryan DiZoglio?
Yes.
Mary Beth Donovan?
Yes.
Lori Keegan?
Yes.
Kristen Maxwell?
Yes.
Daniel Shabilia?
Yes.
Kenneth Willett?
Yes.
Mayor Neil Perry?
Yes.
Unanimous.
The meeting is adjourned at 9:35 PM. We get to 10 o'clock.
Good night, Methuen.
Is there?